Let's talk a little bit more about how we refine and develop our characters. As Michael Cunningham, the great American novelist, once said, we not only add when we develop character, it's important to subtract, to think of fiction writing as a process of subtraction. This probably dates back to a time when someone told me as a child that what Michelangelo did was take a block of marble and cut away everything that wasn't the David. It was, of course, a joke, but I took it literally, and to some extent I still do. What a writer does in a certain way is to look at the world, leave out everything that isn't part of the story at hand, and then examine very, very carefully that which remains. In a sense, all writers cut away everything that isn't germane to the particular part of the story or the character that they've chosen to address. So first we discover our people, our events, and our images. We look closely at them until we can see them fully and clearly. And part of what this means for you is after you've done a very full portrait of your character, the physical being and the sound, you begin to say, what things do I know, but I don't tell? So as a writer, I may need to know a great deal more than I actually put on the page. And the wonderful writer and famous science fiction writer Ursula Le Guin has something to say on the subject of carving away as a writer. Some people see art as a matter of control, she wrote in her book Steering the Craft. I see it mostly as a matter of self-control. It's like this. In me there's a story that wants to be told. It is my end, and I am its means. If I can keep myself, my ego, my opinions, and my mental junk out of the way and find the focus of the story, which for us begins with character, and follow the movement of the story and the life of my character, the story will tell itself. Everything that we talk about here in our classes on the craft, all of your exercises, all of your opportunity to get feedback from your classmates and colleagues, has to do with being ready to let a story tell itself, having the skills to develop a character, knowing the craft, so that when the magic boat comes by, this is her phrase, you can step into it and guide it wherever it wants to go, where you want it to go. And an important part of that magic boat has to do with choosing what to tell. And this rests very importantly on two crucial parts of developing character. One is observation, and the other one is empathy. You will hear both of these ideas come up a lot in my interviews with other writers, and also with our overall approach to the craft of character. Observation is how we get to know what people look like, what they sound like, how they feel to us, how they move in the world, how they interact with the other characters that we're developing, because in the course of your writing, you're not just going to have one character, you're going to have multiple characters, primary characters, secondary characters, and a lot of the story will develop from how they interact with each other. That's all observation. Empathy, in some sense, is the harder part, although I believe that no one becomes a writer without having an instinct for observation and an instinct for empathy. Empathy is the moment where we enter into the character. We don't just see them and observe them, we see the world as they see it. We experience it as they see it. No villain thinks to himself, I'm a bad guy. Villains think to themselves, I'm misunderstood, I'm misheard, I'm a victim of circumstance, I am unappreciated. And in order to write that villain, you have to become the villain, which means you no longer see yourself as a bad guy, you see yourself as a victim. And you begin to see the world as that character sees the world. If the protagonist, the central character for whatever you're writing, whether it's an exercise or a story or a full-blown novel, is a kid, one of the things you're going to want to remember is that that child's point of view is about 4 feet high. What do they see? What do they notice? How does the world seem to them? And that's part of how we enter the soul and the being of our characters. So this will always bring us back to two crucial pieces in the hearing and the seeing and the selecting. That's observation and empathy. The third piece has to do with the selecting, with the chipping away of that which does not serve our story. You always want to remember, as you are developing your character, that they are part of your storytelling. They are essential parts of your storytelling, but they are also the opportunity to engage the reader and move them into your story. And anything that doesn't help move the story along, you will hear me say this all the time, your goal is to illuminate character, to make the character visible to the reader, to advance the story, to keep us going along, and to write sentences that are interesting of themselves. So the selecting part has to do with you saying to yourself, I've decided my character once performed a ballet at the side of a lake all by herself. That may be a beautiful scene, but you have to decide whether or not it goes in the story you're telling or it just goes in your files for future reference. So you hear, you see, you select, and your two primary tools are observation and empathy.